Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and to a very specific video. You guys know I am a huge Etsy fan. That's pretty much where I get all of my vintage pieces, especially now during the pandemic. The truth is, I'm not really a big online shopper. I actually don't think I buy anything online other than on Etsy, and that's because you get the actual measurements of the piece that you're buying, as well as you're finding some really fun vintage pieces, and you're also helping support small businesses, which is really great, especially during this time. So it's kind of like a win-win all around, except maybe for like my wallet. Last week I posted an Etsy haul of things that I've collected since the end of February, and I actually found some really beautiful spring summer pieces, so I'm going to be linking it up here in the cards as well as down in the description box. In that video I mentioned that I was going to be filming a video with some tips and tricks on how to shop on Etsy, so here we are. I have my laptop here and I'm going to be sharing you guys the process of how I find things on Etsy and just kind of like share some tips along the way. Before you start, the first thing that I would recommend is to do some research into the decade that you're trying to dress like or find pieces from that decade, just so you're a little bit more familiar with the types of clothing that was worn at the time. So maybe look through like Pinterest or Google Images or something and start looking at photographs from that time period. Maybe create a little folder on your computer or a Pinterest board, whatever's easier for you to kind of go back and reference. So a good starting point when you're first starting to search on Etsy is to go by decade. So for example, you go to like 1950s dresses, 1940s skirts, that sort of thing. So you kind of put like the time period in the beginning of the search. And I think this is kind of like where most people start searching when they first start shopping on Etsy. Sometimes I do this if I'm just browsing like for fun and I just kind of want to see what's out there. However, keywords are really important if you're looking for something a little bit more specific to a time period. So this is kind of like where the research portion comes in really handy. So for example, if you're shopping for 1960s clothes, you might put in shift dress, mod dress, like space age. For 1950s, maybe like circle skirt or wool pleated skirt, saddle shoes, that sort of thing. Usually when I'm shopping on Etsy, I have something really specific in mind. So right now I'm really into like nautical dresses, so that's something that I would type into like the search bar. So I would just type in nautical dresses and then tons of results are going to come up. So the first thing that I usually do is I go to the little filter section on the left hand side and then I check off the little vintage like box, and that's going to drastically like reduce the search results just because it's going to be all like the vintage stuff and not like the handmade things. To prevent myself from falling in love with a piece that's out of my price range or being tempted by really expensive vintage pieces, because trust me, there are tons of them on Etsy, I do like to filter the budget as well. So I usually start the lowest one by 0, obviously, it's kind of like standard, and then I go between $60 and $120. And the reason I don't choose $100 is because of conversion. So if somebody in the States is pricing something at $100, it's not going to show up in my search results. So I kind of like to keep it at around 120 at like a max. Keep in mind that the price that you're choosing is not going to be the price that you're paying just because you have to add shipping costs to it. But I'm going to come back to shipping like later on in the video. So sometimes there's going to be way too many search results and I don't want to go through like 5,000 items just to see if I can find something. So sometimes I will put my size in the search bar. So for example, I'll put extra small nautical dress or a 23-inch waist wool plaid skirt or something, and it's not 100% effective, but I do find that all the search results that come up tend to be closer to my size than if I was just to search generically. So sometimes if there's like way too many search results, the filter section on the side actually changes and you can select your size on there. So I think that's really helpful as well. It just kind of narrows down the search results and you can find things that are closer to your size. However, if you're being super specific, you might not have as many search results. You might only have like 200 or even less than that. So sometimes you have to think of other words that would describe that piece. So for example, if I'm not finding things under nautical dress, I might look for nautical collar, sailor dress, sailor collar. I actually found a lot of nautical dresses through Sailor Moon dress, which didn't pop up when I looked at sailor dress. So you just have to kind of like play around with the wording a little bit and things that are similar. So you kind of have to sit there and think, how else would somebody else describe this item? So again, going back to the importance of research, it would be really helpful to know some brands that were really popular in the decade that you're interested in. Obviously not designer brands because it's going to be really expensive, but more like everyday brands that people wore. So for example, Sears or Bobby Brooks, Gay Gibson, Pendleton is a really great one if you're looking for wool skirts, that sort of thing. It's going to help you a lot in researching because you can type that into the search bar as well. If you have a smaller frame, you actually can probably get away with wearing junior dresses, and junior dresses in like the 1950s and 60s were made for like teenagers. So think like Abercrombie, how the proportions are more so for teenagers than it is for like adults. And I'm 5'5" and I find that the proportions for junior dresses actually fit me better than women's dresses, and that's probably because I'm not really blessed in the chest area, and I just kind of like fill out a junior dress better than a women's dress. But I mean, they tend to be cheaper and they have a lot of really fun patterns, so not really hating on it. So if you want something that looks even older, Laura Ashley is a beautiful brand that has a little bit more of like a late 1800s turn of the century kind of look. So if you're into like cottagecore kind of aesthetics, you are going to love Laura Ashley. I love their clothes. Their dresses are so dreamy. So definitely like type them into Etsy and see if you can find something in your size. Another tip to get some amazing vintage pieces at a lower price is to actually look at more newer decades and that pulled inspiration from the decade that you're interested in. So for example, 90s does 60s or 80s does 40s. Okay, so say you found an item that you like, then you're gonna click it and you're gonna look through all the photographs to make sure that everything's okay, and then you're gonna read the description and look at the measurements. It's good to have a rough idea of what your measurements are for different types of pieces. So for example, a fit and flare dress, it's really important to know like your waist and your bust size. For a shift dress, so your bust and your hips are probably the most important part. For pants, waist and hips are probably the most important part as well. And it's also good to know like the shortest length that you would go and the longest length you would go just based on your height. I would recommend measuring yourself prior to online shopping and just kind of writing those numbers down so you can reference back on it whenever you're shopping. If you need help on how to measure yourself, I'm actually going to be putting a little guide in the description box of this video. That way you kind of know where to measure yourself where and what each term means. As well, if you're kind of thinking of buying an item but you're not really sure how it's going to fit, you can always measure it flat and then compare it to another item that you have in your closet that looks kind of similar in shape. That way you know how it's going to fit on your body. So I'm personally very picky when it comes to fit. I get so many comments from you guys whenever I shop on Etsy wondering how the pieces that I find always fit me so perfectly, and that is because I am extremely picky when it comes to fit, and there's so many items that I pass up on just because they're an inch a little bit too small or a little bit too big, and I know that if it doesn't fit me the way that I want it to, I'm not going to wear it. So I just would rather keep searching, and then eventually I find something that fits me perfectly. After you looked at the sizing and it's going to fit you perfectly, the next thing that you want to look at is the condition. And again, I am extremely picky when it comes to the condition of the items that I buy. I only buy things that are in excellent and good vintage condition because, I don't know, I'm just like really picky, and obviously I want the pieces that I buy to be in really good condition. And there are some small things that if I love the item, I'll kind of be okay with. Like for example, if they're missing a button, like a really generic button that I can easily replace, then that's not really a big deal. Or if they have a seam that's becoming loose, I can always just kind of like hand stitch that or something. So that for me is not like that big of a deal. I'm like okay with that, but for the most part I do like to buy things that are in excellent condition. So if you look through the photos and you read the description and you still have a few more questions, you can always message the seller and ask them some additional questions about the condition of the item or the fit of the item, and they'll even send you some additional photos if you need them. They obviously want you to be happy with whatever item that you buy, so they'll be happy to help you with whatever you need. However, on that note, I will say to only message the seller if you're genuinely interested in the item. If you know you're not going to buy it, don't message the seller, just because I don't want to say you're going to be wasting their time, but like you don't want to waste their time, if you know what I mean. Okay, so now we're going to get into the worst part about shopping on Etsy, and that is the shipping costs. And I understand that each individual seller is paying for like regular mail as opposed to like a fast fashion brand that has reduced shipping because they ship out so many things, or they have a deal with like the postal service or something. For me, living in Canada, shipping from the United States tends to go somewhere between $17 and $27, like on average around there. It all just kind of depends on the weight and like what state it's coming from and the conversion of the dollar. Truthfully, sometimes shipping is actually cheaper from Europe than it is from the United States. I don't know what the deal is with that because you guys live next door, but sometimes from Europe it actually tends to be cheaper. Like the other day I bought a dress and it was $15 shipping from France. So I don't know, sometimes you do get lucky and you have a little bit of a cheaper shipping from Europe than you do from the United States. In the filter section on the side, you can actually choose what country it comes from. So if you want to select your own country, it might be a little bit cheaper than something that is international. There's also an option to select free shipping, which truthfully I don't really use very often just because I feel like the search results are very narrow whenever I do that. However, you might get lucky and maybe a shop is having a sale that weekend and they're doing free shipping, and then you find an amazing piece with free shipping. So it's definitely worth trying out every once in a while. But in general, I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what's like a normal shipping costs from different places based on like the weight of the item or like how big the item is. Obviously some pieces might be a little bit more expensive, like handbags just because the box might be bigger, or like home decor, something like that. Sometimes I do see items that have a shipping cost that are a little bit like alarmingly high for the item that it is. So for example, the other day I saw a dress and the shipping cost was $53 coming from the States, and that was really high in comparison to like the normal amount of shipping cost. So I ended up messaging the seller, and she had actually selected the wrong size box for that weight of that item. So the shipping actually ended up being double what it should have been. I've also seen Etsy actually make mistakes when they do the little estimate for the shipping costs. So if I do see something that is like alarmingly high, I will message the seller, and then they can compare that number based on your postal code or your address, and they can give you like a really accurate number of how much the shipping is actually going to cost. A lot of the times it is an accurate number, but there have been instances where like the Etsy is actually making a mistake and overcharging for shipping. So it's always good to know and always good to ask. You never know if you never ask. However, I will say it again, only message the seller inquiring about the shipping costs if you're genuinely interested in the item. And also to keep in mind that sometimes shipping is completely out of their control. They don't really have a say in how much the shipping is, especially right now with the pandemic, and shipping costs have gone up so much, and they are just a small business trying to survive in the current times. So just be mindful of that and only message them if you're genuinely interested in the item. Okay, so say you're gonna purchase your item, so you want to double check the photos, double check the description, make sure you read everything and it's exactly what you want. And you don't have to, but sometimes it's a good idea to read the shop policies as well. It gives you a little bit of information on how long it's going to take to ship, especially right now with like the world circumstances and stuff like that. I've actually seen a couple of shops hide little small like discount codes in their shop policies, and it's like a thank you for reading our shop policies, here's like 5% off or like 10% off or something. And I just think it's really smart because then you see how many people are actually reading the shop policies, and it's like a little reward for the people that do read them. On the topic of discount codes, Etsy is not like a regular online store, so there are no like site-wide discount codes. Everything is like individual, and each individual seller has a different discount code if they do want to create some. However, the only tip that I can give you for like a discount code is to go on their Instagram page. Sometimes some sellers have like discount codes for their followers on Instagram, or they do like little sales or something that are only promoted on Instagram through discount codes. So it's always good to just kind of like double check their Instagram page. But other than that, I don't really have any tips for any discounts on Etsy. Again, they are a small business, so if you do want to save a little bit of money, those are the only tips that I have for discount codes. If you have shopped on Etsy before, sometimes the packages come with a little business card, and sometimes those business cards come with a little discount for your next purchase. So make sure you hang on to those just in case for the future, maybe you're gonna buy something else from their shop, and that way you already have a little discount code. I usually save all the ones that have discount codes, and then if I am shopping, I double check to make sure that I don't have any codes for that particular shop. So if you decide you're not going to purchase your item right away and you want to like sleep on it and like think about it a little bit more, you can always move it from your cart to your save for later. And I do this all the time. I probably have about like 80 items in my save for later at any given moment, and these are all items that I love. I've already checked the measurements and the condition, and I would buy them, but obviously I'm not going to buy every single piece that I find that I love because I would spend all my money. So I just put everything in like the save for later. It's all been checked, and then I kind of keep an eye on it and see if any of them go on sale. Sometimes they do sell out and I have to delete them off my save for later, and it's really sad, but you know, it is what it is. However, other times they do go on sale, sometimes 30% off, 50% off, maybe 10% off, and sometimes that discount is enough to push me to buy the item, if you know what I mean. So it's always good to just kind of put it in your save for later if you're not 100% sure on the item, or you want to be a little bit more conscious of your budget. So that is pretty much how I like to shop on Etsy. However, I do have a couple of random tips here that I didn't really know where to put in the rest of the video, so I'm just going to be adding them to like the very end. If you're hunting for something specific, you want to be checking constantly. New items are being added every minute, hour, every day, and some things sell out automatically and then some things stay on the website for months, so you never really know what's going to be added. So you want to be checking constantly, maybe add things to your save for later, maybe some things go on sale, that sort of thing. Just maybe make a habit of it, of logging in every single day, even if it's like a 5-minute thing while you're waiting for your food to heat up in the microwave or something. Another tip that I have is if you find an item that you really like, make sure to check out the profile of that seller. You never know, if you find like a 1960s dress, maybe they'll have more 1960s pieces that you didn't know that you wanted or didn't know how to search for them, and they just kind of have them in their shop. And sometimes a lot of the shops have bundled shipping, so you end up paying the same shipping for one item than you would for 3 items, or maybe like a couple of dollars more gets you more items to ship, so it's definitely worth checking out. Also, on that note, if you find an item that has really low shipping, definitely check out out what else they have, because I feel like cheap shipping on Etsy is like unheard of. So if you do find something that has very low shipping, definitely check out to see like what else they have. The next tip that I have kind of goes without saying. I feel like everyone kind of knows this already, but just in case, you can always look at the reviews of that particular shop and just kind of see what other people are saying about the items that they bought. I feel like 99.9% of the time the sellers are really amazing and the shops have great reviews, so I'm not really that concerned about double checking the reviews every time. I just kind of like skim them really quickly. But yeah, you can always double check that. It's going to be on the seller's profile. And then my last and final tip is to use hyphens if you want to look for something extremely specific. So for example, if you want to look for like a blue wool pleated skirt, if you use hyphens, then Etsy knows not to search for like blue skirts. It's only going to give you like the blue wool pleated skirts. Those keywords are the ones that it's going to look for, and it's going to include all of them. So just kind of keep that in mind if you are looking for something like super specific. I don't really use this very often just because I kind of like to have options relating to what I'm looking for, just because sometimes things will pop up that I didn't know that could be an option for me. Sometimes I am a little bit too stuck in my head of what I'm looking for, so it's always good to have kind of things relating to what I'm looking for, if that makes sense. And yeah, that is the full process of how I like to shop on Etsy. Hopefully this video wasn't like too like specific and you guys still enjoyed it. I feel like most of you guys shop on Etsy, so hopefully you guys find this video interesting and it's not just me like rambling on. I'm also going to include a little list of some of my favorite Etsy shops down below so you guys can check them out, as well as a direct link to my favorites list. Sometimes I do find items on Etsy that unfortunately are not my size or out of my price range, so I do like to put them in my favorites list for you guys to be able to shop as well. So I'm going to be adding a direct link to that, and also obviously a link to my Etsy haul from last week because it is amazing, so you don't want to miss that if you haven't seen it. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up this video. I feel like I have talked your ear off. My throat is currently dying. I feel like I've been talking for hours and I desperately need a coffee. So if you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!